Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope and pray that you all had a good night's rest. Really, really, really excited to see some of your faces this morning. I know a lot of us have not met before, so this is going to be really exciting to meet new people. We're going to wait for maybe one more minute because I know it's a little early and I know folks got the information last night. So that gives folks a chance to adjust and jump on the phone and not miss too much of our meeting today. Good morning. Good morning. Thank y'all for joining. And if you had any issues receiving the toolkit or you can't open it, make sure you just drop a note in the chat for me and I can send you the link with it to your email. Thank you, everyone. Beautiful. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So, my name is Tiffany Dina Lofton. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, but I live in Washington, D.C. I think that's important to name because usually it doesn't matter where we're calling from, but all of us are calling from literally across the country. I put out a post on social media yesterday from a dear friend of mine, Sean King, sharing the letter of the principal and chancellor of the University of Minnesota. And I thought it was a very profound step to take in such a timely matter. I've been doing school organizing and specifically Black youth organizing for 12 years. And I know how hard it is to move administration and to move our leaders on campus. So I was really impressed by the letter. But something told me that they didn't do that out of the kindness of their heart. And I asked social media to help us find who the folks were behind the letter and how the letter came to be. And a lot of folks, thank God for social media, started tagging the Minnesota Student Association. And after they started tagging the Minnesota Student Association, they started tagging this incredibly young, fantastic, smart, talented Black woman. And I was like, of course, it's a Black woman who helped do this work. Of course it is. So I followed this person on social media and it took a couple hours. So I was a little nervous. And so me and the team at the National NAACP and my colleague, Wisdom Cole, who's our national organizing manager, who's on the line, we all were trying to like find how to get in contact with this person on social media as soon as possible because we thought it would be really awesome and important in this moment when people are asking for things to do. People want to be involved. People want to lead. People want to be engaged. I have 72 new messages in my Instagram just from last night when I fell asleep to this morning. There's a hunger and an urgency for people right now in this moment. And I don't think it's unlike any other moment that a lot of us have experienced before, unfortunately. But I think there's always a new opportunity for us to lead. And so I immediately said, well, I work at the NAACP. Me and Wisdom work with young students across the country all day long. How about we show them how to do what the Minnesota Student Association just did? And so I appreciate you all's patience. I appreciate you all pouring in about how powerful this moment is and how necessary it is for this. Wisdom and I are just staff members who are trying to be vessels in this moment to connect people across the country because this movement will sustain itself when we're able to give people what they need. And so we want to give you what you need this morning with the incredible leadership of someone who I just met literally last night, literally a few hours ago, actually. It wasn't that long ago. And we hope that this information is helpful and useful. The staff is here, whether you're NAACP members or not. The staff is here to support you. The staff is here to answer any questions you all have. Wisdom and I both come from UC Santa Cruz, even though we skipped each other, I think, by 4 years, so we didn't go to school at the same time. Him and I organized with the state African Black Coalition in California. So this is not our first rodeo. We've done this a bunch of times, and are here standing by to support you, whether you're a student, whether you're an educator. I had folks reach out to me who were counselors yesterday, and even parents who want to see their students do what Minnesota just did. So without further ado, I want to make sure that I give a proper introduction and then allow her to introduce herself, because I'm excited to meet her as well. Even though I had a chance to listen to some of her interview with Angela Rye yesterday evening. I want to introduce the president of the Minnesota Student Association. Her name is Jael Kerandi, and she is, as I understand it, the first Black woman, as I was at my school, or I wasn't the first Black woman, but I was student body president at my school, and first Black woman vice president as well. And this transition has been interesting for her. I want to appreciate you, Jael, for your time this morning, because I know that you have a lot going on in Minnesota and at your campus. I know that you're getting pulled left and right for interviews. And I also know that you have your own things you need to do. So for taking out the time this morning to speak to all these folks, there's 29 folks here on the phone, literally from different states. We, on behalf of all of us that I don't know, I want to pour into you to make sure that you know you are loved and that you are supported, and that all of us believe in you and got your back for whatever you need. And hopefully after this training, when folks start to connect with each other, there'll be an opportunity for folks to really build on a long-term level. So I'm going to pass the floor to you to walk us through. Tell us how this happened. Tell us how you were able to, move the administration, and what challenges you faced and how you got over them.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today and just talk to all of you. It's really been a blessing to see how many people are willing to support this and willing to be there, and I really appreciate it, and I hope God blesses you all. The biggest thing that I think people tend to have ignored in this movement sometimes is how much work went into this even before I wrote the letter. I hope that all of you have had a chance to read the letter. If not, you can find it on my social media or on Twitter, and a couple people have been sharing it. But the rapport that had to be built prior to is really important. When you go into anything making demands and telling people they have 24 hours to fulfill a request you're making, there has to be some rapport. You also have to be aware of the fact that no one puts out a letter like that without some level of risk. There's a lot of risk that goes into just saying, this is what I want and I want it now. And I think the immediate thought that all these things and all these factors came up for me was, how am I going to do this? And I believe that that morning when we woke up on Tuesday, and that was when the murder happened on Monday, but we started to obviously see these videos on Tuesday morning and seeing all these different things. It like pained me to just sit there and be like, I'm just going to keep watching this on social media. I didn't want to share the video. So many people kept feeling re-traumatized, but I was like, how do I say something, right? Knowing the platform that I have, knowing the position I'm in, and also knowing the constituents I serve. I also go to a PWI, so majority of my constituents are not Black students. They're not students of color. So how do I also support my constituents, but also make sure I'm speaking up for the constituents often not heard. And I remember I texted my advisor and I immediately told him, I'm going to ask that our university no longer works with Minneapolis Police Department. And he just liked my message. And I remember I laughed with him because he's also an administrator, right? He's also being paid by the university. I understood where his position was, but I also made him very aware of what I was going to do, which I often do. And he just kind of chuckles, kind of knowing what's about to go down. But I told him that I was going to write that letter up. And at that point, once I put it in writing, I knew I had to do it. And I started drafting the letter, and I'm currently interning as well. So I'm on an 8-hour workday, and it was in between my breaks and kind of drafting, asking people to take a look while they could, that I started to put this together. And so many people came together to help me in terms of editing and phrasing and making sure that I was fact checking correctly and making sure all my history was right, because it's so important to show the trend. So many people keep trying to treat this as some sort of isolated incident, which is baffling, but there's a trend there. There's been many different instances of racial discrimination that have happened with the Minneapolis Police Department, even internally, and that needed to be called out. And so writing the letter to me was a way to tell our university that no longer will we sit here and wait. No longer are we going to sit here and just be patient. Another thing is I've had many meetings with our police force. I've had many meetings with our president expressing how students feel, especially Black students, with our police on our campus. And it's always this like, well, I named donut hours in my letter, and many people have asked me what that meant. Donut hours are this form of the police coming and handing out donuts and speaking to students. If students aren't comfortable with your mere presence, I don't know what makes you think we're gonna go eat donuts with you. So it was just, I was tired of it. I was sick of it. I was sick of getting the same answer with the same thing. And the hardest thing I think was I was actually not scared about the letter at all. I told you this yesterday, my nerves, and Angela, my nerves came much after. It kind of came a lot after, but it was getting the approval of the executive board. So knowing that I'm president, I do hold the right to go and release any statement that I do wish, but there's also political savviness and a respect you have to give to the organization in which you lead. And that was having to go to my board and make sure that they approved me releasing the letter. And on our board, we hold both voting members and ex officio members. And of all 7 voting members, everybody unanimously approved my posting of that letter. So I just want to let anybody know who's feeling like worried or feeling what's going to go down. Yes, there was people who are a little worried. I was asked if I can wait 24 hours, which I answered a very resounding no. There was questions about, should we wait for this? Should we wait for that? And I said, I've been waiting forever. And Black people have been waiting forever. Our country needs to hear this now. Our university needs to hear this now. And obviously I was terrified after it was released. I mean, you give a 24-hour deadline at 9:30, almost 10 p.m. at night. I just took out all the hours you were sleeping, and I'm expecting somewhat of a less than 12-hour turnaround if we're starting out workday. But I also knew, knowing the relationship that I had with the president, that she would do the right thing. The fear came with how our Board of Regents would act, as well as long as our chief. And our chief has always, I haven't necessarily had the best relationship with him. I have not felt he's very responsive to the needs that we have, but he's also under the purview of our vice president for university services, as well as our president. So I trusted our president in that. And I think the most important thing to me was to see other people have the chance to support. I understood that not everybody was ready to sign out onto that letter when I released it at 9:30 p.m. at night. I understood that not everybody was willing to support it, and I understood that, but I knew that there was people that needed to hear this. I knew that there's people that were waiting for it, which is why I opened it up to signatories. I thought it was important to show our administration how many people truly wanted this. I often get the question of, well, is this just your opinion, or is this everybody's opinion? Or how many people actually believe this? I had people in the comments telling me, well, I've talked to staff and students who don't really appreciate this, or et cetera and et cetera. And I said, well, there's 2,000 signatories and it's been less than 24 hours. So I don't know who you're talking to, but the people on my letter clearly support this. So I think there's also something to be said about there's power in numbers, and there's power in people, and getting the people to support something, because this is not on my own. Along with God's help, this was a matter of people all coming together. So I will stop there, and I will turn it back over to Tiffany. So thank you all.
Thank you, Jael. Okay, so can I ask you a question? I'm waiting for folks. So if folks have questions, because we want you all to understand this, it's not just a meet and greet and a share, right? Like, this is an opportunity for organizers who asked in my DMs and via email to learn more about this so that they can replicate the process. So if you have a question, feel free to write it in the chat or raise your hand on Zoom, and we'll make sure we get to your question. But let me ask you a question. So you sent the letter first and then you did the signatures?
Yeah, so the immediately, as soon as, so my communications director and my chief of staff looked over how we were going to navigate communications. So the first thing that we had to do was, once we got the approval of my executive board, we also have a Congress body that I answer to, and we had to get their approval as well. But I did tell them, as long as I had the support of our executive board, which does represent our organization, I was going to release the letter. So prior to releasing the actual letter, we asked for the support of the executive, of our Congress, and they had 24 24 hours themselves to approve it. So they could have gone on to the last hour really at that point, but we already had the support of the exec board. Once that happened, then we moved to, I had already had my email drafted and ready to go. And I CC'd every single board member, our president, our anybody that I believed was relevant to the conversation was CC'd on that email. I got that ready to go. And I believe actually I posted and then I sent them almost simultaneously. But the signatories did come after. So as soon as the letter was released, the form for signatories was opened at the same time.
That's awesome, because that says you're telling us that you got a response before you had to even show them the signatures in the first place.
Yes, so they actually did not see how many signatures we had before they made the decision. The 2,000 signatories was released, I think, later in the evening, about 7 p.m., something like that. We were in the middle of putting together all the signatories, but they actually made the decision prior to.
Wow, okay. So this is really good. Talk to us a little bit about the research process, because I think a lot of folks jump into like, we want to end police brutality, and then they'll make that the demand, and the demand's not really realistic. I think in your letter, you had very specific asks that got you specific results. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you did some of that research, or how you all did the research? Because I know it wasn't you by yourself. And then, and then how you made the choices for what you wanted to ask for, because I think that'll be really helpful.
Yeah, the reason I was comfortable with asking for the severing of ties is, one, we have our own police department, which actually acts independently. The University of Minnesota Police Department can sustain itself and has external sources they can use other than the Minneapolis Police Department. I was not putting a threat to student safety, and I was not putting a threat to their operation. In terms of the research that was done, as a finance student, I understand trends and I understand data, and I understand the importance of making decisions based on that. If we were to just write the letter and simply talk about the murder of George Floyd, unfortunately, I don't think they would have made the same action. There needed to be something that showed that this was a repeated offense. In addition to that, I cite the Somali Student Association event that happened in spring of 2018, which I was present, and we saw what the Minneapolis police did there. So there were certain instances in which I was able to use backing evidence to show that this has happened on our campus. Whether or not you want to believe it, I was there, I saw it, I know other students that were there. This is a very real thing. But I think history is very important. And I think something that's really important is also history repeats itself. So I think what they needed to understand was, if you are comfortable with letting this happen, I really question how you choose to also be a part of this university and then say that you stand for values of diversity and inclusion.
This is really powerful. Somebody asked a question. Celine, do you want to ask your question? You can come off of mute.
Hi everyone, hope y'all are doing well. I hopped in a little bit late, but I did read the letter, and I think that this is definitely a powerful stance that's being taken and something that we can all learn from. So I recently graduated from Temple. I'm here in Philly, and I'm just wondering, hey, snaps for Philly, yes. I'm just wondering, obviously this is not going to be something that the entire, nation is going to want to replicate. It's going to vary place to place. But do you all think that university police holding jurisdiction solely over the campus or over our campuses is a great alternative? Because I can just speak from personal experience. I know that a lot of students of color, especially females, while I was in college, were not necessarily made to feel comfortable or in any way safe by university police. So while we don't want these larger forces coming in and controlling us, and basically just having a hand in the way things are going on, and they don't know or respect our values. They haven't shown, I'm rambling now, y'all, sorry. But do you think that it's a great alternative to have university police being the main law enforcement, quote unquote, on our campuses?
That's a great question. And the simple answer to that is no. So when I stated that I was not threatening the operations, this was a matter of the 24-hour demand. So let me be clear about that. I don't think our university police also hold very differing values, unfortunately, or have shown to hold very differing values. So let me not speak on maybe all of their moral values that they personally have, but I don't think students have had a much better experience with them. And that's why I keep reiterating that this is but a step, right? So this is what channels into now exploring those other things. This is what sets up the groundwork for those opportunities. Because Celine, like you mentioned, many people feel uncomfortable with university police. Hence the reason I mentioned in that letter, I'm tired of having the conversation with you all about what you believe you're going to do better, these donut hours or these community, whatever they would like to call it, because we're not taking the time to understand what it's doing to people of color, and specifically Black people, with the presence of the police. I think we need a great change within our university police department at the University of Minnesota, something I've stated time and time again, something I've asked for, something I've written reports about, and we weren't getting listened to. I don't know if the mark was being missed. I don't know if my ability to discuss these was just not being taken seriously, but I've said time and time again, students do not feel comfortable with your presence on campus. I don't know why that is so hard for you to understand. So while I do believe that it is a great thing that we are removing the Minneapolis Police Department from our campus, we also have to look into the UMPD as well. And I've definitely said that. Thank you so much for your question as well.
Thank you.
There's one more question. There's two more questions, and then I'm going to cut off the questions because I want to make sure we give you space. I know you got a long day ahead of you, Ma. So thank you so much. There's two more questions. How did you build such a good relationship with administration at your campus? That comes from Davis. And Davis, let us know where you're tuning in from. Go ahead, Jael.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if we were waiting for Davis. My relationship actually began in my first year. I was an intern within our student organization and within our student government, and we were pushing for the change of the sexual misconduct policy in the whole athletics department. Now you can imagine an 18-year-old coming out of high school, sitting there and being like, well, I would like you to change your whole policy. I obviously was doing this alongside our president at the time, but I was very passionate about that. And I started to slowly, I think God gave me this understanding of our university system and higher ed and how it moves and how exactly people choose to make decisions. And I think in understanding the constituencies everybody represented and what they needed to do, it was very important to me to understand what each administrator needed and wanted. It was also important to me to understand where students were not being heard and identifying those areas very clearly to administration. I believe that I also was willing to just get to know administrators. I don't necessarily always see them on the defensive end. I don't always think they're against us, but I also understand that we represent very different constituencies. And I think by building that respect, being willing to listen, being willing to do my research, do my homework, be respectful, and also just understanding that I think that letter came with a lot of power, but also many times it's having a very humble approach, understanding and allowing people to know that I respect your position, I respect you are the decision maker, and please understand that the values that your organization or your university is presenting could be violated should you not choose to do this. And in times of which I got pushback, I often just said, please let me know who the better suited person was, or please let me know if this is a conversation better suited for the president. I was willing to talk to somebody higher up, and that's okay. But I was also willing to talk to everybody who was doing their work.
That's really important. I want to hone in on that because that's part of the toolkit also, is making sure that folks know sometimes you're asking a demand of someone who can't give you a yes, right? They can just give you the runaround. So it's really important to make sure that you can find the person who can actually give you what you want. And you just said it. You're like, actually, if you can't give me what I want, or you're not the person to talk to, let me know who that person is, because you will go to that person and it's fine. And the respect of that person's position and your role and the weight of your role, because you know who you represent, being the student body president, right? It gives you that leverage. That's really dope. Okay, so there's a few more questions and I'm acknowledging them, you all, but Wisdom's gonna go over the toolkit in just a couple seconds. And so some of those questions we'll save for the toolkit as well, because we're gonna answer some of them. But I have one last question for you. Okay. Because this is always the juiciest question for me when I'm doing my work, especially at the NAACP, where I also have to do this with Black people too. Who were your biggest opposition, and how did you organize around that? There's a lot of, and I say opposition as an organizer using that word specifically, because there's a lot of haters, right? But the haters can't stop or interrupt the work that you're doing. So where did the biggest opposition, organized opposition come from, if there was any, and how did you organize around that?
Yeah, great question. I think there was very little room for opposition, to be quite honest, because by the time I wrote the letter, and by the time I actually linked the letter in the agenda for my executive board meeting a minute before the meeting was called to order. So they saw the letter almost simultaneously. And part of that reason was the letter was finished at that time. So that's when it could be released. And it wasn't going to be released a moment sooner. So it was the understanding of, you can read it. And I didn't want people to have time to go back and to talk and to make up every reason why it shouldn't be released. I think it's a very clear understanding. And right now in Minnesota, we're talking about this idea of evidence and the burden of proof, knowing that videographic evidence is some of the highest evidence you can bring to the court of law. So I feel like at that point I said, well, I feel like you have everything you need to know to make a sound decision. And if the decision you are making is not in line with your values as a student advocate, I question why you remain in your position. And I didn't need to state this because I think my board knew very clearly what I was getting at. I was asked to wait 24 hours, and I respectfully said no. I said I will consult, I will seek approval, I will offer the proper measures. I'm not a person who is power hungry. I'm perfectly fine with that, but we have waited far too long. So the opposition came more with people wanting to be careful. And I think that some people were scared, which is why the letter was released with my own name. And one of my board members actually said, I think Jael should just release it first, and then we'll all sign on. Let's wait to sign on. And that's really powerful. So I think the opposition came from people, a little bit from fear. I don't think anyone actually opposed the content of the letter until after the fact. There's a lot of people who were very critical of it, which is fine. People who said I wasn't listening or I didn't give room to listen. One thing I've always said was I've always listened to students. My email's always open. I've always been willing to sit down with students, and people try to make it a partisan issue. It's not a partisan issue. Murder is not a partisan issue to me. But it was it was seeing the support of many students to know that it was more black and white on whether or not that letter should be released or not.
I hope that we're all noticing and or taking note of this. This doesn't happen overnight, right? Like building relationships and having folks trust your leadership. Obviously, because you are an elected position, there were folks who joined not only your staff, but also were a part of your office and a part of your team and community and network that have your back. And so there's no need to even apologize or explain for power tripping, or that's my role, or that's my job, or I'm the president, et cetera. And I hope that all of us are taking note that we need to build these relationships before moments of crisis happen, so that when moments of crisis happen, we can be successful and lead. Jael, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your genius and your wisdom. I'm noting that this is a part of this tactic is a part of a campaign specifically for this season, for this week of what's going on. And I'm sure that the rest of your presidency is going to go just as incredible. All of us are watching you and excited to support you through your presidency and thereafter. I hope this won't be the first time you join us, or the last time that you join us and come work with us. We train students from across the country all the time, and we're launching a Black Civic Summer, quote, the shit you didn't learn in school, in June. And so I hope that you will join us again to talk to those folks as well in that class. But thank you again. Be safe. We appreciate you. And I will make sure that if there are more questions that you and I connect offline when you have space and time, when you can breathe, so that we can help support the folks who are here, because I'm sure that you inspired folks to take action at their schools as well, high schools and middle schools and colleges, Mike. So people are telling you thank you. Can you share with folks your social media? Folks are asking what your social media is.
Yes, I can drop I can drop it in the chat. And you just mentioned something about my staff and all those people. So I currently have a staff of 35 people. We have about 20 interns and about 20 fellows under me. And then I also have my chief of staff, who is a white woman, and my vice president, who's also a white man. And so a lot of people have been coming to me asking me, so is this, how do you feel about white? And it's always a question I kind of like, what are you talking about? Because if you look at my staff and you look at everyone I lead, I'm only a Black woman on our executive board. I never intend to treat people wrongly. I've always been willing to listen, always been willing to be kind. And I think it goes a lot back to just you being a kind person. There's a lot of people that have been saying nasty things, and I constantly say, I forgive you for you don't know what you're doing. But it's so important to me that you be kind. I think some people want to be in leadership, but don't want to be kind leaders, and don't want to give space to people, and don't want to be ready to lead somebody. But it is so important to be just a kind leader and be willing to know people for who they are before you make assumptions and make intentions. I know there's some people who probably didn't want that letter released, but I think there's people that also trusted me enough and knew who I was as a person and my ethics and values to do that. So I do see other questions. I'd be happy to take them over Facebook or over Instagram or whatever, so we can chat them. But thank you so much, Wisdom. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Jael, thank you so much for being a kind leader and unapologetically Black. We love you, and we got your back. Let us know how we can be helpful, and be safe, and have a great day today. I know you got a lot of stuff on your plate. Thank you. Okay, so that was very special. I'm really excited that we have 42 people on the line. We're going to transition now into walking through. We're gonna only take 20 more minutes of your time, and then this call is over. Because we know it's Friday and people got stuff they got to do. So keep dropping your IG handles in the chat. We'll save the chat as well and send it to you all right afterwards. That's my commitment. So if you're not able to copy and paste all the stuff in the chat, don't worry, I'll make sure I send that to everyone. I'm going to pivot now to somebody who I've known for a very long time. I mentioned him a little earlier, but let me just give y'all a little background since y'all don't know who he is. He is a native, he's a Nigerian, but he's native from California, and where the great state of California, if I don't say so myself. And he joined the NAACP 2 years ago. A few days ago was his anniversary at the National NAACP. He's our national organizing manager. And Wisdom is not only an incredible organizer and civic engagement director, but he's also unapologetically Black and has been doing organizing with youth and students across the country for just as long as I have. He's also an educator. So he was a high school teacher. So there's a lot of folks on the meeting today who are also educators. So you and Wisdom have that in common. And he's almost like my little brother, but he's grown way past me. I'm very excited about the toolkit that he pulled together. He actually, he's been working with a few folks. He not only worked with Jael from Minnesota, but he also has been working with other students. Some of them I see here on the call from across the country, because Minnesota, like I said, hasn't been the only school to write letters to get their administration to demand things. And so this is going to be helpful. If you have questions, Wisdom's going to be the person I probably send all the questions to, because he's the genius. So Wisdom, Oluwadunse Cole, I'm going to pass the floor to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm just so amazed and loving all the words that Jael brought this morning, really teaching us how to organize for power, right? When we see an issue happening on our campuses or in our communities, what does it really mean to leverage those relationships that we have with the folks who are in power to ensure that we are serving our community? I know everybody wants to respond in different ways in this current moment, and there's a lot of things going on. I've been talking with a lot of friends and colleagues and people that this summer is very reminiscent of summer 2016 for me, and this feeling of pain. And I know that oftentimes that as we are not able to congregate the way that we like to congregate, we are looking for ways and searching for answers to actually address these problems. And so I think it's very, very important for us to think of alternative ways and alternative solutions to ensure that this just doesn't happen again, right? We can't be reactionary. We need to be preventative. We need to make sure we put things in place and measures in place and make sure we have the right people in place to ensure that we are protecting our community. And so real quick, I want to give a shout out to Couture, to D'Angelique, to Wolfgang, to Warner from Howard University, who actually really helped put this toolkit together. We brought our minds together real quick in a brainstorm session, thinking about what ways we could actually end police terrorism and using the advice that we've seen in the media as well as from our collective experience. And so I really appreciate that. So again, we're going to be talking about what are the real steps to end police terrorism in your school. Next slide. So really it's 5 steps. We're broken down in 5 steps. First being research and questions, right? Thinking about what are the areas we need to assess to understand how police terrorism is affecting our students on our campus. The second is building people power, right? Recognizing who are the people in your community and what does your community think about the issues going on in your campus and how the police affect the folks in the community. The third step is to organize your ask, right? Oftentimes we think about the results and wonder why the results aren't what we want them to be, right? We fight and we fight and we fight, we push and we push and we push, we march, we march and we march, but oftentimes we do not see the results that we wanted to see initially. That comes from your ask, right? Making sure you have a good ask so you have a great result. The fourth step is controlling your narrative, right? As we see time and time again, when Black people are murdered by the police, the narrative changes almost immediately. Oh, they're a gangbanger. Oh, they deserve to die. What were they doing out there in the first place? All these questions in comments about what does it mean to really be Black and what do we really deserve are put in the media. And so we need to make sure we control our narrative. And then the last step is to put pressure and action. I saw in the questions earlier that some people asked, what does it mean to really shift the relationships with universities that you don't have a good relationship with your admin, or you don't have a good relationship with the police department? And that's real, right? We all have different relationships. We look at our country and things that work in California don't work in Georgia. Things that work in Georgia don't work in Minnesota. Things that work in Minnesota don't work in DC. And so it's really, really important for us to understand the landscape and how do we look for different leverage points to ensure that we are getting the results that we want. Next slide. So in this time period, I personally love to think about our elders and the folks who taught us how to fight, the folks who gave us the words, the wisdom, the knowledge, the know-how to ensure that we are doing what is right for our people. And so something that really brings me peace and brings me joy and also brings me the spirit and willingness to fight is from our elder, Asada Shakur. And she says, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains." Right? In this period of time, it is our duty to protect each other. If you are a person, what I really love what Jael said earlier, if you are a person who has power on your campus, if you're a person who has power in the NAACP, if you're a person has power in whatever organization that you're a part of, it is your duty to protect each other. It is your duty to support the folks who cannot support themselves. If you're in a role like that and you cannot do that, it's time to really, really evaluate what you're doing in that role. So we're gonna go into our first step. The first step is around research and questions. So we wanna make sure that we are asking good questions, thinking about the relationship between our institutions and the police department. So some questions you might wanna ask when you're thinking about that is, does your institution have a formal relationship with the police department? And what is it, right? Is there a contract? What ways are they communicating? What are the places in which they convene together to make these decisions? Is there a relationship specific to Black people, right? What is your policy? What are the ways in which you are ensuring that Black people have a say in the way that folks are being policed or in the way that police are present on campus, right? Is there city PD? Is there campus PD? What is that dynamic that is in place? Is the school really benefiting from all the police presence, right? We say that, oh, the police are helping to keep the peace. The police are helping to ensure that there's order, right? Are they really doing that for us? Or is that just a ruse? Is that just what they're saying to ensure that we're not angry or that we're not frustrated or we don't advocate to ensure that they're not on our campuses, right? What is the real value of having police there? Then we want to make sure we're evaluating institution contracts. So why do we need both campus PD and city PD on our campuses? I know back when I used to go to UC Santa Cruz, there was campus PD and there was city PD on campus. I know that our city PD would routinely come on a campus to check on things. And so recognizing that there are a lot of police on campus at a certain period of time. And in some states, the campus PD come from the city PD, right? So we need to really evaluate those relationships and what does the contract say? We need to understand what cases should we reach out to in terms of school police versus the city, right? What are issues that the school police are in charge of, and what issues are the city PD in charge of? Has the school taken any stance on Black Lives Matter? Has your chancellor or your office of the president or the folks who are in power in the administration, have they said anything in support of the Black students on campus? When there is an issue just like this or a murder just like this, is your campus putting a statement out? Are they saying something to reassure their students that they're going to be safe? What are those things? If they're not doing that, part of this training is ensuring that we can push our folks who are in those positions to ensure that the future of our students on those campuses are safe. Another question you want to ask is, how long has the contract started with the police, and when is it renewed, right? So as we know, contracts are renewed, they're signed, they're dated, all that good stuff. And so we want to make sure we know the timeline. We want to understand, is there money involved in the contract and who's paying for it? If I'm a student on campus and I pay student fees and I have to pay to ensure that I'm able to go to my classes and that the school is running properly, and I know that my money is going towards funding the police coming on our campus, maybe I'm not so interested in doing that with my money. And maybe there's also students who are on your campuses who are also not interested in doing that as well. And so recognizing where the money is coming from. And last but not least, we want to evaluate our capacity. Is there an NAACP on your campus? Are there other local grassroots organizations that are working around legal help? Who are the student organizations on your campus? And then who are some alumni, faculty, and staff who can support you as well, right? This is a movement. This is not just you. We got to make sure we involve everyone. Step 2, we want to begin to build power, right? We want to start thinking and talking with our community about their views and how they see this issue. Some key ways you can do this is making sure you have online surveys, you're holding town halls, you're having listening sessions, you're really getting feedback from your community, ensuring that their voice is heard within this movement. We want to use social media, right? We have so many things at our fingertips. I know there's been an influx of media, an influx of posting, an influx of just movement building happening online because of the current social distancing or physical distancing due to COVID. And so we want to use social media to our advantage, right? Twitter, Instagram, emails, TikTok, all those great stuff so we can get the message out. And then last but not least, we want to show our victories, right? It's very, very important for us to inspire the folks to see, hey, how was this done and how can this be replicated? What I really love about Jael and what they did in Minnesota is that they were able to publicize that super quick, and people are now able to take this, replicate it, and make it happen on their campus.
I know we're short on time. Can I add one more thing? So this is really important, you all. This slide, step 2, building people power. I get a lot of messages of people asking me what is it that they can do, and they'll have grand ideas that I think are really, really incredible, but they don't have any people support. We got a lot of, and I call them vigilantes. There's a lot of people who are vigilantes who are trying to do things on their own, and then they'll try to just do it by themselves. We cannot win by ourselves. The work that Jael did, not only running for her position to garner support for her work, but also to hire so many people on her team, so many interns and so many fellows, gives her the leverage to work in an organization that has people, right? And so the reason for this slide that Wisdom just went over is not only to build people power, but to make sure that 1, you don't have to do this work by yourself, and 2, that you are supported and endorsed. I asked Jael, I said, wait a minute, why did you do the survey if you already sent the letter? She said to us, I did the petition, I did the petition because I knew we needed an audience of people, because folks always try to say, well, that's just how you feel. That's how other people feel. And other people don't feel that way. I haven't heard that. And so building people's support for your campaign and for your work is necessary. It is not optional. It is necessary. Sorry, Wiz.
That's perfect. That really leads into our next step, is really understanding and thinking about our asks. We really want to think about the languages of power and how we are communicating our asks. We want to make sure we have specific winnable asks that give us the desired results of our campaign. So some key examples of that is student oversight committees and quarterly reporting systems means that police are held accountable with student agency on the procedure. So thinking about, oftentimes in my own research, I'm seeing that there sometimes on campuses, there is a student oversight committee that's composed of 2 students. It has 2 professors, to staff members, things of that nature, right? We really want to understand that process and ensuring that there are Black students who are part of that committee and have an influence in terms of the oversight of policing on campus. Another example is cancel police contracts means ending the police presence on campus. If we are trying to end police presence on campus, we need to cancel the contracts. The institutions of learning outsource their internal police reviews to trusted investigators means independent investigators of incidents of police brutality, right? If there's an incident or an issue on campus and there's an investigation, if that's happening internally, I oftentimes doubt that, is that really being fair to the parties involved with this situation? How can we turn to trusted sources who are outside of that current police department and ensure that there's a fair investigation so that we get justice? The last example is that police will not carry guns on campus, means de-escalating a situation differently and handling dangerous situations without a gun, right? Oftentimes we may not be able to have control if there is police presence on our campus. And so we recognize that police also have weapons. They have things that are used to hurt our people and for destruction. And so if we want to make sure that police do not carry guns on campus, we're recognizing that we need to have alternate de-escalation methods. They need to understand our culture and our communities and are able to work with folks and not kill folks. Step 4, we want to control our narrative. Really thinking about what is it we are saying and how are we ensuring that we are getting that out to the media and controlling the story. So we want to start to share what's happening in the meeting, right? If you are meeting with admin, if you're having these conversations, make sure that folks know about these conversations. Make sure that you're posting to Instagram, you're tweeting out comments that are being said, you're letting people know what is going on in the media. Make sure you have social media recaps, things to let folks know where we're at now, what we just did, and where we're moving to in the coming days. Make phone calls, text messages to folks to let people know what happened. If there are supporters, things like other students, professors, staff members, folks in the community who are supporting you, have them do formal video messages so they're keeping people engaged with what's happening in the effort to end police terrorism on your campus. And people ask me, no, Wisdom, why is this important? Why do we need to ensure that we control the narrative? Why is it important that we put these things out on social media, right? There's so much stuff out there, like, why does it matter that I do it? Well, it's important that we focus on public accountability and transparency. The NAACP is a membership-based organization. That's powerful. What that means is that we're accountable to y'all. We're accountable to our members. We're accountable to the people who are part of this organization to keep the organization running and ensuring that we're doing what's best of interest for our members. And so we need to make sure we're having public accountability and transparency. We want to tell our own stories, right? We know that the media lies. We know that oftentimes television tells all lies. And so we want to make sure that we are controlling our stories and putting our stories out there the way that they need to be told. We want to ensure that there's safety on campus, right? By publicizing, we recognize that folks know about this issue and know what's going on and that we are increasing safety. We want to make sure that student leaders are working on behalf of students, right? Just like Jael said, this is for students. If I'm putting my individual harps and issues and things of that nature, right? We bring ourselves into a space, but recognizing that if you're in these elected positions, that you serve students. And then last but not least, showing that we have power to hold decision makers accountable, right? This is going to lead into our next step, which is step 5, is recognizing that after we have these meetings, after we have these conversations, we want to make sure that we start to flex our power and apply pressure. We want to make sure that we are contacting other decision makers or influencers, right? Are there other folks on your campus who have an influence on the chancellor, on the office of the president, on your principal, on your teachers, right? Folks who are able to sway them and make sure that they are doing what is in the best interest of the students there. We want to ensure, next step after that is making sure we have direct action. If they are not listening to our needs and our wants and our desires for our campus, we want to make sure we're moving to direct action. What are ways that we can apply pressure? Is it a sit-in? Is it a protest? What are the ways that we can show that business as usual may not continue? We want to talk to the media, right? Oftentimes campuses hate the media, they hate publicity, they hate the fact that you are taking this outside of the campus, right? People try to keep it within the house, but recognizing that if you aren't addressing our needs, we're going to let the world know that there's an issue here. And then last but not least, we want to contact elected officials. Again, everything is about relationships. So while you're working on this, we want to make sure that we are having relations with elected officials who are in the local community. They also have an influence on your campus, on your schools, on your middle schools, on your elementary schools, high schools. All of our educational systems, elected officials have and contribute to that process. And so if we aren't seeing movement happening on our campus from our administrators, we're going to go to our elected officials to support us and make sure that we have the support needed to get the job done. Next slide. So here's an example of the letter from the Minnesota Student Association. We'll be sharing this so you all can use this as an example as you create your own letters to your administration. And so last but not least, there are a few resources here for you that you can engage in. Thinking about police reporting, definitely check out Raheem.org. Raheem.org is an amazing resource that allows you to submit your incidents, or if you see things are happening on your community, if it's happening to you, if it's happening to somebody that you see, if it's happening on your campus, you can submit there. And it's important for us to collect these stories so we can use them and share them. The ACLU has a lot of great materials, great Know Your Rights materials. We also want to understand the history of campus policing, right? Where does that come from, and where is it going now? There's a great resource coming out of California, recognizing and understanding how there are police-based officers, or community resource officers. And so it's really, really important for us to tap into that knowledge. I believe, is it the last slide? All right. And again, so for any more information, I know we're running short on time, definitely feel free to reach out to us at youthandcollege@naacpnet.org, or check out our website and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're gonna go into our question and answer session right now. I think you're on mute, Tiffany.
Sorry. So we have a question. We can do two things because this is a space, and I can see everybody's name, so I know there's no trolls in here. You can ask the question either by unmuting yourself and asking, or raising your hand so we can see you. But I know that there's questions also in the chat that I want to honor. So thank you, Wiz. There's a question from Ruth, who said, what suggestions do we have for making change so the actual work behind the demands does not burden Black student leaders? I'm gonna take a roll at this first. This is really important. And I'm gonna say Black student leaders, Ruth, but I'm also gonna say Black women and Black female students. A lot of times when we look at our NAACP chapters of Black student unions across the country, a lot of times we see Black women leading and doing all of the work. And so the suggestions that we have are simple. The work that we're doing right now across the country, not just because of George Floyd, but even with Sean Reed and Breonna Taylor and Nina Pop and Ahmaud Arbery and the names that continue during the pandemic, and the work that folks have been doing, I'm gonna honor even before we got locked in the house. The work that we're doing is very, very, very emotionally taxing sometimes. And what happens is we find that folks who have leadership positions or titles, right? So I'm a national director. Folks who have leadership titles will do the work that they think is either the sexiest work, the most attractive work, and then give the tedious, hard work to everybody else. And when that happens, we don't empower people to be leaders in the campaign work that we want folks to do. Let me give you an example. If I'm the national director and I'm doing all the interviews because I want to be on TV, and I'm doing all of the national calls, and I'm facilitating all of the meetings, but there's work to database emails. There's work to send communications and to build toolkits. There's work to recruit people on social media. There is work to make sure that the Zoom link works and that the password gets right. And if I don't do any of that and I delegate that to other people, people are going to leave the work that we're asking them to do because we haven't asked them to do any serious work. So the suggestion is, make sure that when you are asking people to help you with your vision, help you with ending police terror on campus, help you with ending student loan debt, help you with running for office, that you're not just giving them the work that you don't want to do. That's the first suggestion. The second suggestion is, when we're in positions of leadership and we're allowed to create internship positions or create roles for people, make sure that you do that. Don't just dictate and tell people what you want them to do. Say to folks, hey, what should we do? and then give people an opportunity to create their own positions. So I'm gonna give you real life example. I spoke to Wisdom before Wisdom took this job, and I was like, Wiz, he was the first person that I got to hire, second person, excuse me, that I got to hire in the department. And when I called Wisdom to ask him about this position I was thinking of, I did not tell him the position was his. I didn't tell him the position belonged to him. What I did was I said, hey, we're trying to organize young Black leaders across the entire country. I know you love doing this work. Here's the organizing chart of what I'm thinking. What do you think we'll need to build a strong department to carry the work forward? And when Wisdom was talking to me, he mentioned, listen, folks need to get trained and folks need to get organized. He then didn't even know it, but he's helping me create his job title, right? Because that would be dope to have a national organizing manager, a part of the department. It's not me to say, hey, I want you to be an intern, or hey, I want you to volunteer, and then not give him a position that can help build his resume or help strengthen his leadership. So I say that because sometimes when we have problems where all the Black people have to do all the work, it's because we're not actually asking other people to take real positions, to do real things. We're asking people to do stuff that we don't want to do, and don't nobody want to do the regular stuff. You can ask my team. I was databasing all y'all emails from my Instagram account, which was dumb. I shouldn't have done it that way, but that's how I did it because I was in bed when I thought of the idea. And so I was helping last night till midnight, database people's emails and send the email out communication myself, because nobody is too good to do any of the work. There's another question that says, so Armani, thank you, Armani, for sending the link from Loyola University, New Orleans. Like I said, I'll make sure that I send out the chat so that this is all saved and you all will get access to that link. There were demands that the students there shared, and she's happy to share her experience. And there's the link for the information. Soon as a graduate, how can I continue to impact my campus and my community? That's a great question. Wisdom, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, most definitely.
From a random iPhone, so I don't know who it is, but somebody asked the question. It's a good enough question.
No, it's a great question. It's something that I also hold near and dear to my heart as alumni of UC Santa Cruz. Just recognizing, like, even just as Tiffany said, right? Tiffany also being alumni of UC Santa Cruz, that's a direct relation. That's definitely continuing the work and ensuring that we are engaging as alumni, that like we also have a stake, we also have a hold there. We also want to support the students in developing their leadership. And so if you are a leader who has graduated from a university, one, I think it's your job to always mentor the folks who come behind you, making sure that you are passing on that knowledge and wisdom. Oftentimes, as a student leader, the university or a campus or an institution, regardless if it's K through 12 education or higher education, will wait you out, right? If you're one of those students who is pushing for change, who causes noise, who is rallying the troops and getting people together, right? The university will wait you out. And so it's important for you to pass your knowledge and wisdom and understanding to the folks behind you. And as they are rallying and putting towards their demands, with the power that you have with your alumni network, also putting pressure on the administration and making sure they're doing right by the students who are currently there, right? As alumni of the university, you actually have a lot of power, right? You oftentimes even have voting power in terms of who is a part of, who heads up and leads the alumni association of your university. And so recognizing that there are all points of power, right? Just like Jael said earlier, right? If this person can't give me what I want, direct me to the person who can. If you're an alumni and you understand the systems, you got to give game to the folks who are still on campus who can help support that community. If you're an alumni on campus and you have more influence and more direct contact to the chancellor, right? Even, give me an example. Tiffany had a really, really great relationship with our chancellor back in the day, and she was able to have a direct relationship and a direct influence in terms of things that he did and made decisions. And so I would call up Tiffany and be like, hey, Tiffany, you know, they're messing with us here on campus. They're not giving us the funding that we need to put on our programs. Can you talk with our chancellor and ensure that he does this? And she's like, there it is. And she would just say, hey, what do you need? Rather than even like trying to influence what she thinks is right, what she thinks needs to happen, she would just say, what do you need? And I would just tell her.
There's a few questions. We're going to end with this last one, you all, because I want to come close. We're coming close to the hour. I want to honor time. So the last question, I think you and I, Wiz, probably can bounce back and forth on this, but the questions that I've been seeing are when the students don't have a good relationship with the administration, or when they feel like they're in a block, like they can't move the administration because the administration either supports the police or they don't care about the student's voice or whatever it is, how do folks still see progress while there's no momentum? And I'll read the question. What are steps that students can take for campuses that have little to no support from admin and campus police? And what resources can we give to students to make them active and informed? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would definitely go back to step two in building power within your community, right? I think it all starts there. It all starts with what is your base? Oftentimes I feel like we feel powerless because we're seeing issues and we're seeing insecurities that are happening within our community, and we don't feel in connection with other folks who are on our campus or even in our state. And so we definitely need to build power and build community. If there are conferences or spaces where people gather together to discuss issues, right, those spaces are very transformative. I remember for me, back in California, it was the Student of Color Conference and the African Black Coalition Conference, which was a space with power and connect with other students and learn from them, right? So one, I appreciate everyone here on the call coming from all parts of the country because we're learning from each other, we're growing together. This is an example in Minnesota, right, that can affect and transform our country in your campuses all over the world. And so we need to build power with our community and the people who are in our network so that one, we can start to flex on that power. If the university, if you don't have a good relationship with the university, that's fine. If you have power, if you have an army of folks who are feeling the same way, they're gonna listen. If we all decided, hey, we're not coming back next semester, we're not gonna be at this university, oh, they're gonna listen. I'll pass it to Tiffany.
Because you're about to keep going. That's absolutely right. And that's the answer I was going to give. So I won't even add to that because that was perfect. Everyone, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to honor time again because I'm very respectful. You know, people during the pandemic have been trying to abuse Zoom. I am not one of those people. So we will end. I thank you each for joining us this morning. I thank you each for your participation yesterday and sliding in my DMs so that you can get connected. I definitely intend to make sure that you all stay connected and that we at the national level are able to support you all through your work, because it would be a great victory if at the end of 2020, we were able to say that 67 schools broke police terror on their campuses and at their schools across the country. And I want to see that vision. I want to see that victory for all of us. So if you are committed and you really want to make sure that this happens and you want to do the research, you want to build power at your schools and you want to win change, make sure that you email Youth in College at NAACP, and me and Wisdom and Jael and Derek and Russell on our team will be very hands-on in supporting you every step of the way to make sure that this happens. I am so honored to be able to facilitate and pull this space together. I'm so thankful that I get to work with incredible people like Wisdom. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you all. Listen, take care of yourselves. In this moment, take care of each other, because there is a lot physically, emotionally, and spiritually that is coming for us. I was doing an interview the other day and I said, you know, I thought that during the pandemic, racism would have took a break. White supremacy would have been in the house. We would have saw a decrease in the violence. And we are in completely the opposite space. And so as a national organizer, I know what it feels like to be by yourself. I know what it feels like to be alone at home right now. I want to honor every single one of you all and offer that tonight at 6:30, if you go to our NAACP Youth in College page, Jaselyn Livingston is hosting a emotional emancipation circle. It's closed for only Black people that self-identify. So if you feel like tonight you ain't got nothing to do because you in the house like me and you want to join a safe space that'll offer some healing and some celebration about our community, join us tonight at 6:30. The link is in our Instagram and our bio. And we also, like I mentioned, have our civic summer courses that will be starting on June 9th. Registration opens on Monday. So if you're interested in joining that as well, I think it's going to be off the freaking chain. I want to say off the fucking chain. It's going to be off the fucking chain. The shit you did not learn in school, it's only for Black folks. So we are very unapologetic about supporting our people and what they need right now in this moment. And I hope that you all will join us for those classes as we prepare for November 3rd to not only kick out, but also get rid of the idiot who threatened us last night in Missouri and threatened us across the country. That if we started looting, he would shoot us back. And I feel like right now more than ever, I believe in the power of Black people. I believe in the victory and freedom and liberation of us. And I know that the only people who are going to help make that happen are the people on this phone. So thank you so much. Have a great Friday. God bless you. And we look forward to being in contact. Talk to y'all soon. Thank you, Wiz.
Thank you.